Oh, hi everyone. My name's Didi Verg and I'm here with my special guest, Morry Zelcovitch.
Hello, everyone.
And we're going to be speaking to Morry today about just what got him to where he is in life. So, Morry, would you mind telling us a little bit about where you are now? Because I know you as the developer of the Morry Method, which is, Tri-liminal Brain Wave Entrainment technology.
Well said, yes.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about that.
Well, basically, I have a system that I devised that helped me to help myself. I went through a period, which I'm sure we'll get into in a little while, that made me go out hunting for things, hunting for methods, for technology, whatever could help me to help myself, because I was in really bad shape.
Okay.
Really, really bad shape, severely depressed, suicidal.
Okay. And how old were you when all this was occurring, where you felt this?
Conscious awareness. So probably for me, that would be at about maybe 10 years old.
Oh, you were suicidal. You were suicidal?
From the very beginning. For as long as I can remember, I heard millions and millions and thousands of voices all the time.
And sorry, when you say voices, what do you mean by voices?
Have you ever been at a rock concert?
Yes.
Or in a very large gathering of people and they're all just yakking away? Blah, 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 blah. That's what I heard. And occasionally I could make out a word here and there. But it's not like I was getting messages from anywhere.
Right.
I wasn't being told to do anything.
Yeah.
So
you had all these, it's just like this constant background noise in the back of your mind?
Yeah, a din of spoken words over and over and over. And it was all the time. And I thought for a lot of the time, I just thought this is how it is.
Oh, you thought this was normal?
I thought everybody dealt with this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that caused you to be depressed?
Quite a bit. I was injured a lot as well. I've probably been broken every bone in my body, ripped every and shredded every tendon, multiple concussions. I've broken my nose so many times people ask me where I had it done.
Oh, so some positive benefits.
Yeah, there have been some benefits out of this, definitely.
Okay, so well, let's start with one thing. So you were depressed.
Yes.
You had all this noise going on in the background of your mind.
Yes.
And a number of physical injuries. How did that impact you psychologically?
Well, later in life, as a matter of fact, maybe 10 years ago, I realized that those were attempts to hurt myself.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
Very successful attempts to hurt myself.
Yes.
The suicide attempts were not so successful.
Oh, so you actually attempted suicide.
Oh, yeah. But no one ever knew.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't doing it to try to get attention or to try to get my message out or I'm in pain, help me.
Oh,
I actually just couldn't take life. I remember I'd wake up every morning and I'd look out the window expecting to see mushroom clouds and destroyed buildings across the street.
That's interesting.
And I was almost hoping for it, actually.
Wow, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So that was your state of mind of life back then.
I had what I call my Reader's Digest or Hallmark reading card about life, and it goes like this. Life is a disease for which there is no cure but death. That's how I lived basically the first 2/3 of my life.
And so how old were you when you started to turn that around?
I was probably turning it around from the beginning in a way, when bad things are happening or you perceive them as bad, if they don't beat you, they do indeed make you stronger.
Okay.
And I didn't perceive the strength until later on. But I would say the real changes started happening for me probably when I hit about maybe 34, 35. I started really searching for ways to help myself.
Okay.
Whereas before, I was longing for ways to help myself, but I really wasn't doing anything.
Yeah, you were just kind of stuck in the suffering.
Yeah, I did a lot of drugs, smoked a hell of a lot of pot.
Oh, I think, did you not have an addiction to that?
Massive addiction to drugs, yeah.
Okay.
Massive addiction to alcohol.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So drugs,
because I was trying
alcohol.
to dull my pain. And in all honesty, it really did dull my pain for the few moments at a time that it managed to.
Of course.
But I had to be basically stoned 24/7. I mean, I remember I'd come home from a night of partying, and I mean, that makes it sound like I was having a good time. I really wasn't.
Yeah.
But I would come home and I'd have a joint. Okay. Then I'd sit in front of the TV and I'd roll about 15 or 20 joints for the next day. Then I'd go out and have another joint right before I go to sleep. I'd wake up in the morning and the first thing I would do, I wouldn't go to the washroom, I wouldn't brush my teeth yet. I would go out and have a joint.
So isn't that interesting? You were using marijuana like people do cigarettes.
Yeah.
You were chain smoking.
Oh, big time, yeah. And alcohol also.
Alcohol.
Lots of alcohol. I experimented with some of the harder drugs, but I found marijuana helped more.
Okay.
You know, I tried Coke, I tried acid, you know, things like that. But they really didn't help me. I didn't feel any benefit from them.
Okay.
It didn't make me, you know, numb on the inside. And that's really what I was going for.
Okay, yeah, because were you still having that noise, that mental
I
noise?
had the noise from early awareness till about 40.
Okay.
And I'm 53 now. So.
Okay. Okay, so tell us what you found that first started to impact your life, that started to, as you say, turn it around.
I went camping. And again, camping is a great excuse to get wasted, which is why I went camping. But I'd sit in front of the fire and I'd hear the crackling and the flickering of the lights. And
mesmerizing.
Very mesmerizing.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, I noticed that time flew. Mm-hmm. Keep in mind, when you're depressed and hateful and spiteful all the time crawls.
Right.
You know, I feel like I've been alive about 200, 300 years already at that point, because that's how slow time was going for me.
Okay.
And with the fire and the flickering and the crackle, 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 an hour or two had passed, and I thought it was about 3 or 4 minutes.
Oh, isn't that interesting? So you had time distortion.
Yeah, and I started thinking, wow, and you know, not only did it only feel like a few minutes, but I wasn't really thinking anything bad. I wasn't thinking about, you know, jumping on the fire and killing myself.
Yeah.
You know, I just realized that there's something to this that maybe I need to look into. And it's funny because, you know, and I tell people this all the time, my life was so dark. Imagine the darkest dark that you can, the blackest black. Now, to me, that would be bright daylight back then.
Wow.
That's how dark. But the one benefit of pure pitch black is that the small speck of light is very easy to see.
That's right.
And that experience showed up on my radar as a very, very tiny speck of light.
Right.
And when you concentrate on things, you know, it's a common thing that the more you think about something, the more influence it has over you, the more you see only that. So I started concentrating on the light instead of the dark. And that inspired me to go out and look at hypnosis and look at meditation and look at recordings and look at light and sound and look at this and look at that. Try to find something, even medicines for that matter, you know, to try to help myself. Now, you have to remember that, you know, this isn't 5 years ago. Back when I was going through all of this, the doctors were saying, Morry, you're coping really well. And I'm telling them, but I've tried to kill myself.
Yeah.
You know?
And what did they say to that? What was their response?
They said, yeah, but you didn't. And I said, but you got to be able to do something for me here. I mean, I shouldn't have to live my life like this. And they go, honestly, there's really not much we can do. This is before the days of ultra medication, right?
Right.
Now I could go in with 2% of my story and they medicate the crap out of me.
Right, right.
But back then they didn't medicate me.
Yeah.
So I'm looking and looking. And this is before the internet. This is before all of that stuff. I found a magazine called Tools for Exploration.
Oh, I remember
catalog,
that.
right?
Oh, that was a great...
Amazing.
Is it still around?
I think so. Online, anyway.
So great. Such a great magazine.
Yeah.
It had the most interesting things.
Amazing stuff.
Yeah.
And it introduced me to a whole world I didn't know existed. And it gave me a little bit of hope.
Right.
I actually had a little bit of hope.
Light
that I never
growing
had
bigger
before.
at that point?
A little bit.
Okay.
Now, keep in mind, at that time, I still wasn't getting better. But some part of me, I guess, knew that was the path I needed to take. I needed to keep studying. I needed to keep looking.
Right.
Research shows now that the more someone takes part in their own healing, and that's like physical healing too, like if you have cancer or if you have AIDS or you know, anything for that matter, the more likely you are to heal.
Sure.
Not just that, but the faster you're likely to heal and the more effective treatments are likely to be for you.
Well, you're taking action.
Exactly.
So.
Okay. And now they have studies to prove that. But that's, I guess, one of the early things that I was learning in my experience. I was learning that the more I made an effort to understand what was happening to me, the more I was getting hopeful.
And the more hopeful you were getting, the more you were
the more light
forward.
I saw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's really nuts.
What was one of the first sort of products or something that really helped you and really got you started on this pathway?
Well, you know, I tried a lot of things. And many of them helped me while I was using them.
Okay.
Okay. I'm kind of hesitant to say what I tried that didn't work because I don't want other people
Yes,
to
of
think
course, yeah.
I'm different than you are.
Yeah, everybody's
So,
different. So
yeah,
things
so-
are going to impact people differently.
Exactly. And I would hate for people to go, wow, I can really relate to Morry's story, so I'm going to ignore everything that didn't work for him.
Yeah. So
Because it might work for them.
we'll
So I'd
stay
rather
away
not.
from that.
Yeah, I'd rather not say
Tell us
something
what did
didn't
work.
Entrainment worked.
Okay.
I came across this guy in, of all places, Edmonton. His name was David Seaver, and he had a company at the time called Comptronic Devices. He's changed the name since then, but he had a light and a sound machine,
Oh, I remember
and it
those. Yeah.
flickers lights in front of your eyes
Yeah.
and blah 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 blah, in
Yeah.
the ears, and everything else I tried. While I was using it, if it worked at all,
Right.
it worked. But as soon as
Right.
it was over, 20 minutes, whatever, and then I'd be back.
Okay.
With this, though, I noticed 3 or 4 hours later, I was actually still feeling pretty good.
Amazing.
It was
Okay.
beyond amazing. I'd never experienced that
And-
before. The voices, it's like...
Oh, so he had a recording that went along
Well,
with...
he had a machine.
Yeah,
It was
I
actually
remember
a
the light
computer
and
machine,
sound.
yeah.
But was he actually saying things to
No.
it? Oh, okay.
No, you see, this is the
Oh,
difference.
you're talking about the voices in your mental...
Yes.
Oh, so tell me what happened to the voices.
The voices just went away. And then they'd come back a few hours later. But the fact that I had a couple hours where the voices weren't there showed me that this is something that might be able to help me.
And was it cumulative? In other words, the more you use the sound and light, the longer they stayed away for?
Yeah, the more regularly and consistently that I used it, and that was another lesson I learned. I felt that, I needed something like, I want to take a pill and then never have to do anything again because I'll be happy.
Right.
That's not how it works.
No.
Our brains
Seldom
are
how it
hardwired. Yeah, our brains are hardwired a lot weirder than
Right.
that, and a lot more
Yes,
complex
yes,
than that. And I actually had to, it's funny, with all the depression, with all this, and even during this times, I'm still doing things to hurt myself and kill myself, or to try to anyway.
Yes.
And interestingly enough, though, I still had this knowledge inside that said, listen to me, you can be helped if you keep working at it.
So there was like a little part of you or a little voice that was kind of in the background?
It wasn't really a voice, it was more of a knowing. There's just something that said, you're suffering like this for a reason.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And it wasn't like I'm suffering because I'm a bad person.
Right.
Or because maybe I was a bad person in a previous life or something. I was suffering because I wasn't getting a message I'm supposed to get. And until I get the message, it's going to get louder and louder. I equate it this way. If I have the element on my stove on and I put my hand close to it, it feels warm. If I put my hand right on it, I'll burn myself.
Right.
Right? Now, if I burn myself, I'm not likely to put my hand on it again.
Exactly, yeah.
But in my head, that's exactly what I was doing. I was constantly burning myself over and over and over again because I was not paying attention to the lesson
message, yes.
and the message.
Yeah.
And that grew a philosophy of mine that I now have that inspires me to this day, and it will continue to do so, is that bad things are not bad things. They're actually good. But we have been brought up in our society to believe bad things, and again, bad things is a word.
Okay.
Death is a word.
Right.
Okay, all these things are words. They don't really mean anything in and of themselves. Look at it this way. Let's say I was out exercising, cycling, for instance, and I had a heart attack. So I would feel a tightness in my chest, and then I start feeling pain, and I start sweating. All these are signs that I'm having a heart attack. Well, at some point, I go, this isn't heartburn. I better get off my bike. I better call 911 and go to a hospital.
Symptom, right.
That's right. So it tells me something's not right here. Go see a doctor. So I go see a doctor and I'm fine. 99 out of 100 times now you have a heart attack. They can help you to full recovery. You learn lessons about yourself. You can live a totally normal life.
Okay.
That's because of the pain. That's because of the discomfort. That's because of the danger. Now I'm out there on my bike and I'm riding and I don't feel pain, but I'm having a heart attack.
Right.
I don't feel pain. I don't get sweaty. I don't get nauseous. None of it.
Okay.
Well, now I keep exercising and I die.
Okay.
The lesson is pain is your friend. It's trying to teach you
Again,
things.
it's a symptom, yeah. It's a symptom
Well,
that you need to pay attention.
You know what? To me, it's even more than that.
Okay,
it's
tell me
a
about
best
that.
friend telling you, listen to me, you're doing something wrong.
Okay.
People take antacids all the time so they can eat their, no offense to Mexican food, but
Yeah.
Mexican food, for instance, because it gives them horrible heartburn. Okay, not everybody, but a
Yeah.
lot of people, horrible heartburn. And you see commercials on TV. Oh,
Take
and then
this
they
and you
pop
can
out a
eat
pill.
anything you want.
Yeah, eat anything you want. But they're ignoring the fact that the pain is a message.
Yeah, it's don't eat that.
Yeah, the pain is telling you,
Don't eat that
stop
food.
it. You're hurting yourself. Physically, you're hurting yourself. And if you don't listen to that message, you can take these pills to mask the symptoms all you want, but you will have problems later on down the road because you are damaging your body eating this kind of food. Now, not everybody feels these things because not everybody is damaged by these things. But that's what the pain is for. It's not there. You know, you don't take an aspirin or a Tylenol because you have sore muscles every time you have a sore muscle. If you do it once in a while, fine. But if you're finding you have to do it every day, go see someone.
Right.
Find out what the cause is, because all you're treating is the symptom. You're not listening to the message. So that's the biggest lesson I learned.
Okay.
Pain, discomfort, depression, all of this is a message.
So what did you come up with? Like, what was the message for you? Other than we already know that there's something that's going to come from this.
Yes. The message for me was, and for me, because I'm kind of pig-headed, so I
Right.
don't really pay attention to these things. I ignore them, or I used to ignore them at least. So the message, so they kept getting worse and worse and worse. Kind of like an adult who says, oh, honey, don't do that.
Right.
And then honey does it anyway.
Yeah.
Goes, honey, stop it.
Right.
Smack!
Yeah.
You know, because now you have no choice because the
Right.
kid's just not listening. That's what happened with me. Things kept getting worse and worse and
Okay.
worse and worse and worse until finally I pay attention. So I made that connection in my head that I'm getting messages from these things.
Okay. And what was the one learning that you got that you, or maybe more than one?
It was a constant, I can't really identify one watershed moment.
Sure.
I can identify it as a whole series of a bunch of little lessons that finally clued me in to something that should have been obvious to me after 10 times, but it took probably 10,000, 10 million times before I finally realized it. Every time I had a little pain, every time I had depression, every time I wanted to kill myself, instead of thinking about what it meant, I would just act or react. It made me start thinking about it. And I started going, what's going on here? How did what happened to get me there? It made me realize that there's more to it than it seems.
Okay.
You know, you're sitting in traffic, driving, right? And you think you're okay because you're not exhibiting any signs of stress, nothing.
Right.
All of a sudden, somebody cuts you off out of nowhere, and you just explode. You go crazy, and you do the old, you know what, with the fingers, and you're yelling and you're screaming. Now, to most of us, we interpret that as we were fine until this one event happened
They
and
did it
set
to
us
me,
off,
yeah.
right? But that isn't the truth. That isn't how it works. Everything that happens, even if it seems like it happened in a split second, was a whole series of events that led up to it. Even if it's a split second, there's a series of events that builds up.
So are you saying it made you very consciously aware
Yes. And
of your thought patterns and the thoughts you're having that led up to the reaction?
And how and why
Okay,
I had those thoughts. That maybe
so-
is even more important for
So
me.
share a little bit with us about how and what, like how and what kind of thoughts you were having.
Well, for instance, my quantum tri-liminal system, for instance, is an interesting example because it's reverse engineering of my depressive way of thinking.
Right.
So when we're born, we're children, we're kids, especially babies. We don't have any ideas about love or about hate or about beauty or about
We're neutral, yeah.
anything. We have nothing.
Yeah.
Neutral suggests that we know something and we don't have an opinion one way or the other.
Okay.
We don't know anything.
Okay.
Okay.
Like a blank slate.
Yeah, we are literally a blank slate.
Okay.
So the question is, how does that blank slate get filled up? Right? How do you become who you are? How do you get your beliefs, right? About the universe, about life, about God, about anything? Well, you get them from outside sources because that's the only place you're going to get them from. You get them from your parents, you get them from your teachers,
Family leaders.
religious leaders, family leaders, friends, news, media, television shows, whatever you're exposed to, that's where you get it from.
Right.
And when you get something enough, when you hear it enough times, when you're exposed to it enough times, you will just accept it as real and legitimate.
Okay.
The minute you accept something as legitimate and real, that's when you become that thought.
Got it.
Okay? So if you're racist, you hear enough things about a certain type of person. Once you hear it enough times, you instantly,
You accept it.
You accept it as true.
Yeah, you accept it as a belief.
That's right. And once you accept it as true, it is you.
Okay.
And that's how we all came
And you
into being.
react from that point on from that.
From the programming,
Right.
because that's how we
Sure.
get programmed. So this technology for the tri-liminals was designed based on exactly the same philosophy, but the thought kind of hit my head. What if you do exactly the same thing that made me depressed and suicidal and hateful and spiteful? Take exactly the same method, if you will, that got me into this horrible, disgusting, hellish place, but change the content. Because the process is really efficient and effective.
You're talking about the structure. You took the structure that created that horrible place.
And I just changed the content.
Right.
And by changing the content, I changed everything. And I went from being a horribly depressing person, to someone who's like happier and happier and happier. Yeah. And I continually get happier. And don't get me wrong, it's not like my life is, 100% what other people might call perfect. Don't sit there envying me. I have pain. I have struggles. I have, we're human. That's the experience, right? But I learn from these things and I smile and I laugh from them. And it's the most amazing feeling in the world. I remember who I was before. Mm-hmm. And I tell you who I was before.
Yes.
And it literally feels like I'm lying to you. Because I am such a different person.
Right.
I think Deepak Chopra said that our cells, every cell in our body, over the varying time frames, but over the span of 7 years, you're totally new. Sure. Not one cell in your body is older than 7 years old, right? Well, it's almost like I slushed off who I was before. And I remember it, but I can't remember the pain.
Yeah, you can't feel it anymore.
Yeah.
It's just like a distant memory.
Yeah, and it doesn't even feel like me, because in reality, that's
not
all those cells, they're all gone now. It's not me anymore.
You've been replaced.
I've been replaced with, Morry version 2.0. Or actually, at this point, it's more like Morry version 72.0. But, because you're never perfectly formed. I think the human experience, for me at least, and another lesson I was taught, is that we're always changing. And when the day we stop changing, that we think we've gotten there, we've beaten our demons, if you will, is the day when we've actually given in to them.
That's interesting.
We've been fooled by them into thinking we're okay. I think the minute you lose your vigilance about yourself, the minute you get cocky, I have to admit, I am so much better now than I've ever been. That being said, I could live to be 100 million years old, and I'd never be all I could be.
Right.
So I
you're
have
constantly
to keep
growing and evolving.
Yeah, I have to keep striving all the time.
So you think that that's the key then?
I think the key is to be satisfied with who you are, to choose, I say this with my wife all the time, we choose to be happy. Happiness is a choice. And it truly is, because you choose what to think about. I can think about leg cramps. I can think about a pain in my chest. I can think about a pain in my heart, if I have heartbreak or something. But I can also choose to be grateful. And when you think about, even the simplest thing, this couch. Do you know how many people were involved in the creation of this couch? That you'll never know. You'll never know their names. You'll never know their family situations or anything. But without them, we'd be sitting on the floor. And then we could be grateful for all the billions of people and things that went into making the floor.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
So if you choose to be grateful, if you choose to be happy, then you are. And I have an exercise that I do every day. When I go to sleep at night, I think about 10 things from that day that I'm grateful for, that happened.
Yes. Okay?
And I'm not allowed to write notes, because the minute you write notes, you stop looking after you hit 10, right?
Yeah.
Maybe at 9:30 in the morning, you have 10 already. So you have to be able to remember them.
Okay.
Or even write them down. And at night, when I go to sleep, I say them and I go to sleep and I think about them. So the last thought in my head is about being grateful. In the morning, I know that at night I have to have 10 more things that I'm grateful for that happened that day, which means my vigilance is tuned now to looking for good things.
That's right.
As opposed to looking for bad. I don't really believe in the law of attraction. Through my experience, there's no such thing. It's more of being aware.
Well, focusing on the light rather than the dark.
Exactly.
Right. Because before you were in the dark and that's all you could see. You couldn't see a way out of the dark.
That's right.
But then that tiny speck just started and it got bigger and bigger, and then you totally did a 360 and now you're just focusing on that light.
That's right. And even when bad things happen or dark things or what other people might consider dark, I do have moments. I'm not going to lie to you. I have moments where I'm, you know.
Well, nobody's 100% happy all the time.
But they're just moments.
Okay.
And I see positives in everything now. Even, like I said, the pain is teaching me something.
Right. Okay.
It's even if I don't know what it is right now. You could say, okay, Morry, so right now you're in pain. What's that teaching you? I wouldn't be able to tell you right now what it's teaching me because I'd like to think I've been learning. But obviously there's stuff I still have to learn. Sometimes pain isn't there to teach you something specifically or aggravation or stress. Sometimes it's there to teach you patience.
Agreed.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think patience is a real bonus for people. The problem is we don't pay attention. We don't really live in the now. And I'll tell you something. When you're hurting, you're never more in the now than when you're hurting.
That's
because
true.
the pain draws your attention to right this moment, right?
And you can only deal with what's going on at this moment because you're managing the pain.
That's right.
Yeah, it is. It's like breaking your arm or something. You don't realize breaking your finger.
Sure.
You don't realize how important that finger was.
That's right.
And how much you use it and how much it's a part of your everyday life and every movement until you break that finger. Then you're like, wow, that pain is just showing you how invaluable that finger is.
But, you know, the pain in itself, I mean, I've been talking a lot about how valuable pain is and discomfort and stuff, but it also teaches you that you need to be grateful for when you don't feel that either.
Yes.
You know,
Pleasures in
I
life.
have cramps in my legs, but my hands feel fine. So why don't I put my attention on my hands?
Exactly.
Instead.
Right.
And in our society, again, we've been taught to pay attention to pain, not really to other feelings.
Or the problem.
Sure. Let me ask you, when was the last time you thought about the left toe or the big toe on your left foot?
About 1 second ago.
Right. But before that, it was probably when you stubbed it.
Yes.
Right? So we're taught to pay attention to pain and discomfort and disruption. But we're not taught to pay attention to good things.
Right. And those are the things we're grateful for
That's
that you're
right.
talking about.
And that's why I think, like, one of the biggest lessons I learned was to be grateful for every silly little thing. People are always saying, oh, you don't have to say thank you for this. You don't have to be so appreciative. Oh, yeah, I do.
Yeah, I agree.
I do.
It's like focusing on what you've been gifted or blessed with.
Yeah.
Because we're very blessed in this part of the world we live in.
Oh, sure.
If those, there are people that are living on pavements with no water, with no food, and day to day, the only thing that's on their mind is where's my next meal coming from?
Do you know that I might be wrong on the numbers, but it's in the billions for sure. At least a quarter of the planet has never experienced electricity.
Yeah. And we're so lucky. We just plug everything in. We want heat, we turn on the heater. We want hot water, the hot water tank is always heating our water.
That's right.
We live like in the utmost of luxury.
And we take it for granted.
Well, of course. When I want some food, I just go to the supermarket.
Yeah.
I have every kind of food available to me. When those other people, if they could get one little piece of food, one little morsel of food, that's enough for them to be grateful for.
That's right. Well, that's the thing. I really think that we all need to. And this is, in my life, I've had so many hardships. But you know what? My family, great. I can't say I wasn't loved by my parents. My father, in the 70s, this is 1970 for anyone who's young watching, it's not 1870 or 70. But my father turned down a job at the time, which paid almost $250,000. Now, for those of you who are too young, $250,000 in the 70s, maybe
like $1 million now.
Probably more than $1 million. Probably closer to $3 to $5 million in the equivalent. Because it would have taken him away from his wife and his kids 7-8 months out of the year.
Wow.
And he thought it would be better and more valuable to have the father image and the love for the kids and the wife than to have the money and buy them cars and buy them every toy they ever wanted, but not to have love in a relationship.
Not to have him.
That's it. And you know what? I had friends who had parents who were the other way. It was all about money and buying things for them. And I'll tell you something. Now, I have I'm fortunate enough that both my parents are with us still, and they're wonderful people. And my wife jokes around that, we see them as friends more often than we see our other friends.
Wow, that's nice.
And it's really nice. And we respect them and we love them. And it's just a wonderful situation. And these other people, I know people who haven't even talked to their parents in 10 years.
So you come from this loving background.
Yep.
And yet you grew up depressed. Like, how do you explain that? Do you think that there was some experience you had that kind of caused that flawed thinking or that flawed structure? Like, what is it that you think happened to you, despite the fact that you had this amazing, loving background in childhood, that caused you, by the time you were 10 years old, to want to kill yourself?
Yeah.
Like, what is it? Like, because there are many people that have loving parents but grow up really messed up.
Yeah. Well, you know what? In my case, because I did have loving parents, I still do have loving parents and friends and family and everything. The truth of the matter is, I made the connection. I think I've always been a scientist at heart.
Okay.
I always needed to understand things. So when I got by the fact that when I realized I couldn't find a way to die, I had to find a way to live.
Okay.
And that's really what the thought process that turned me around. Because to be honest with you, look, how hard is it to kill yourself?
Yeah,
Get into
if you
a car,
really wanted to.
80 miles an hour, or 140 kilometers an hour, whichever you prefer, right into a brick wall.
So you're saying if you had really wanted to kill yourself, you would have been successful?
Yeah, I could have jumped off a building. I mean, there's a million. I could have taken 5,000 pills.
Right.
I mean, if you really want to die,
you'll do it.
You can do it.
Right.
The fact that I had what I can identify as 5 separate incidences where I tried to kill myself, and none of them were successful, proves to me that I really didn't want to die.
Yeah,
or at least
like
there was a larger part of me that didn't want to die than the part that did want to die. And that part started asserting itself and I guess getting stronger and stronger as time went on.
But what is it that, if you can look back and try and identify when you first developed the structure of the thinking, because you said it was the structure of your thinking,
yes.
It's the thoughts about things, the meaning you made certain things mean in life that caused you to be depressed. Can you look back and identify when you first learned to do that?
When I first recognized what it was when I first understood that there was a step pattern. Nothing happened on-off.
Right.
Everything happens in a series. And my first thought was, well, if I could pay attention, I would recognize those steps. And you may not be able to stop a full-fledged panic attack.
Okay.
But if you learn to recognize the precursors to a panic attack,
and the thoughts before the thoughts kind of thing.
Then
thoughts leading up to it.
That's it, exactly. You can stop the panic attack then because it's not a panic attack yet.
Right.
It's on its way to becoming a panic attack, but it's not one yet. So for me, when I made that connection, and then when I made the connection and the understanding that every thought you have is an interpretation.
We make meaning of things.
Yeah, exactly. So something may happen that you and I see.
Right.
But you might sit there and go, yeah, okay, we'll deal with this. And I might go, I can't handle this because I've interpreted it a different way. When I made that interpretation, your brain kind of works interestingly. It works this way. Something happens, a stimulus. Okay? You decide, and this all happens like in a nanosecond, really quick. So a stimulus, is it good or bad? Well, it's really good. Okay? How really good is it? Oh, it's amazingly good. Then your brain creates chemistry that supports that assertion. When you feel something, it's brain chemistry that's making you feel that way. You've interpreted something, you've experienced something, interpreted it, how much, good or bad, and then your brain creates chemistry that makes you feel the way you feel.
The biochemical reaction to that interpretation
or perception
or
of what's happening. Of what's happening around you.
Okay.
So when I realized that it was a neurochemical response that actually made you feel that way, you made a decision, but that decision created chemistry. I thought, well, what if I could control that response? Well, the problem is I had a lot of people telling me, Morry, you need to do this, you need to do that. And of course, the first thoughts in my head were, but you don't understand. I mean, I appreciate your trying. And this is in my head a lot of the time. I'm not even saying it out loud, right? So I'm saying, you don't understand. I know you love me and you care about me and you want to help me, but you don't know what it's like to be me. You don't know what it's like to wake up every morning and want to be dead.
Right. And
to have such a hard time getting through your day because you have to pretend and fool people into thinking you're happy and, to do this and to do that. You just don't understand. Now, when you have that attitude, I'm not really hearing all the things you're saying. What I'm hearing is, wah, 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 wah. That's all I'm hearing. I don't hear
Right.
anything.
Right.
Because I'm not really listening because you don't understand. So why would anything you say have any importance to me?
Yeah, you're stuck in the problem
That's right.
state.
Well,
you're not open.
That's right. Then what happened was, at that point, I'm getting this understanding to begin with, and I'm starting to use the Brain Wave Entrainment.
Okay.
And it's subtly changing my brain patterns. See, what happens is not just something happens, a stimulus, you interpret it, then you interpret it how strongly or how well or how bad it is.
Okay.
By doing that, how does your brain produce the neurochemistry? It produces it by resonating at a frequency. So if it's resonating in theta, or alpha or beta or delta, you're getting different types of chemicals released, different types of hormones, neurotransmitters, endorphins.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
So using the entrainment, I was able to subtly change my neurochemistry, my brainwave patterns. When the brainwave patterns altered because of the entrainment,
Right. Because that machine was putting you into a certain
state
state.
and dominant state. That's
Okay.
the important part. And that dominant state released chemicals and combinations of chemicals that I wasn't used to.
Okay. And what was the impact of that?
The impact of that was now Didi comes and says, because she sees how much Morry's hurting, so again she reaches out and again she says to Morry, Morry, you really should try this and this and this, and we really would like you to be happy instead of dealing with this. The difference is now instead of hearing wah wah wah, I'm hearing, Morry, we care about you. Why don't you try doing things like this?
Okay.
Suddenly I'm hearing things. Because that's the nature of depression. The nature of depression is you have a few things happen and you get an expectation. It's like a Pavlovian response. The dog knows when the bell rings that it's going to get food. So you don't even need food.
Okay.
You just hear the bell, you assume the next 15 steps are going to happen. And that
you create an expectation.
That's right.
Right.
So it gives you a negative thought or a series of negative thoughts. And then that series of negative thoughts produces brain chemistry, which supports the negative thought. It makes you feel bad. It makes you feel depressed.
Well, I've always said for every thought you have, there's a biochemical correspondent.
You're 100% correct.
So that it's like the thought comes and then comes the chemicals that represent that thought.
And the chemicals are what you feel. That's the experience part.
Yes.
And then those chemicals, endless cycle, those chemicals make you feel depressed. That feeling of depression adds to more negative thoughts, which makes you feel more depressed,
It's
which
a
adds
cycle,
to more,
yeah.
and it just goes on and on and on.
It's a cycle that actually spirals downwards when you think about it.
It can, definitely.
Right.
You're lucky if you just stay level. Good point.
Yeah, but I don't know that people do, because I think every thought pattern or behavior we repeat over time gets ingrained stronger in our neurology, and it creates like such a strong imprint that your brain just automatically takes that from then on in.
That's it, exactly. So now imagine,
That's
though,
the expectation. It's like,
right. But now imagine that you have this brain chemistry. You now understand. You see, this is how I operate. I need to understand something.
Right.
When I understand it, I can then take action against it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I don't understand something, I'm scared, and it has power over me. And my instinctive reaction was, let's try to understand the nature of this depression I have.
Okay.
And that was the nature of the depression. I had kind of learned a process that was self-perpetuating.
Right. It
And
was
it
the
went on and
structure,
on and on.
like you said, it was the structure of the thoughts and the beliefs you had that were causing the expectation, which were cycling you.
And of course, those were
stuck in
creating
that.
the chemicals, which created the feeling,
Right.
which created more thoughts and more feeling. Well, using the entrainment, I subtly changed the chemistry.
Yes.
That's how you break out. That's how I
Right.
broke out.
It gave you a
That
different
was-
experience.
It changed everything for me.
Right.
Because you have this circle and you can't break out of it because, I can't. I'm not meant to. God hates me. The
You're
universe
stuck
hates
in it.
me.
You're stuck in the
You're
cycle.
Stuck. But your thoughts produce a chemistry that make you believe that you can't break out and
Right.
break free and change things. The minute you change the chemistry, even subtly, it changes the playing field. And now those negative thoughts get questioned instead of just accepted.
Right.
And when people
And
offer
you're
ideas,
conscious of them too.
That's right.
Instead of all this going on unconsciously and all you know is you feel the feeling,
Yeah.
you started to be conscious of it.
That's right.
You started to experience different feelings and question it.
And the possibility that I could feel different. The biggest problem with
Yeah,
depression,
is
with me at
believing
least, is that you feel like this is you forever.
Right.
And this is going to be you forever.
Right.
And you're
You
hopeless.
can see
and
no
you're
way
helpless.
out.
That's right.
Right.
But when you change your neurochemistry, and in a sense, that's what a lot of these, drugs they give you, they're synthetic boosters of dopamine or acetylcholine.
They change your
and different
chemistry.
things. That's right. So doing it naturally is going to be the best way.
I agree. So you did it with the Brain Wave Entrainment.
Yes.
So then what came after that? What was, because now you're like one of the most world-renowned Brainwave Entrainment specialists. So
Sure.
So what got you from there, from just doing it yourself and experiencing the changes to actually developing these products?
Good question. What happened was, in my case, the entrainment helped, like I mentioned to you. I had a few hours of relief, but then it would still come back.
Right.
And I realized it was part of the equation. It wasn't all of it.
Right.
I realized that I had to now figure out, reverse engineer, if you will, how we learn.
Okay.
And we already discussed that a little bit, that we learn by hearing it from other people. But you need to hear often and over and over and over again before you start accepting things. So I started incorporating my brainwave entrainment with spoken word.
Okay.
And I told myself, various ways, you are this, you are that, it is this, it is that.
Like affirmations.
Yeah, but affirmations don't work at all. And this is one of the things I
Unless
discovered.
you believe them.
Well, but you don't believe them unless they come, and here's the kicker here, from somebody else.
Oh.
You cannot say,
That's
I am rich. You cannot say, I am healthy. You cannot say, I am anything, because that never works.
Because you don't believe it.
How can you believe it?
Yeah, it's
my
not
legs
your
are killing
experience.
me. I've got a bad cold. I'm poor.
Yeah.
I mean, saying I am a million times is not going to help a thing. It's a fallacy. Okay? It's I don't know if it's a lie on purpose that's been perpetuated for thousands of years, or maybe just a misunderstanding. But I have used affirmations for years, decades, and gotten nowhere with them. Every single person I know who's used affirmations has gotten nowhere with them.
Well, I don't bother, because if I don't believe it, I'm just... it's not going to go in.
That's right. But I know a lot of people who think affirmations have helped them. But I know them for years, and it hasn't made any difference in their lives at all. They're pretending it has because they've done it.
So what made it different than you telling yourself?
I reverse engineered how we learn things.
And
I went back to that whole story about when we're a baby and how this blank slate becomes a full blackboard of garbage, right? And it came from other people. So the trick of an affirmation isn't I am.
Or your interpretation of...
Of course.
Yeah, because sometimes well-meaning parents say,
but your interpretation,
you're not going to be able to do that. But what they don't mean is,
but your interpretation comes from things you've heard from everyone else anyway.
Exactly.
Again, you're a blank slate. You have nothing to go with. It's not like you're a computer. Don't think of yourself as a computer that someone puts software into. That's not who you are. You are a computer with nothing. You don't have an operating system. You have nothing. All you have is an autonomic nervous system that makes you breathe and, go to the washroom.
So
that's it.
So telling me about the reverse engineering.
Right. So I looked at how I learned all these horrible, evil things that I believed about life and how I learned in school. And it was purely repetition. How do you study for an exam? You read, you read, you read, you write, you write, you write. The only way to build a neural pathway is to repeat things and repeat things and repeat things. And that's how we learn. So again, changing the content, using the, there's a hormone called LTP, stands for long-term potentiation. There are theories, there were old research that I believed in from many moons ago, and now there's a lot more that, substantiate this, that if you have LTP in your system, in your brain, information goes in the ear, forms a neural pathway, a memory pathway, if you will, and there you go. If you don't have it, it goes in one ear and out the other. Now, we all have experiences where we've heard things or said things, and then 10 minutes later, we don't remember it at all.
They don't have any impact.
Right. It's because you didn't have LTP. Okay. So, I came up with this idea for Tri-liminals. Now, this is a product now, but before it was a lifesaver. Okay. Because it wasn't enough to have the entrainment. The entrainment helped me, but it's kind of like the entrainment is tilling the soil, fertilizing the soil, aerating it. Now I need to plant high quality seeds. So how do I plant the high quality seeds? I have this beautiful earth now. How do I plant the high quality seeds? Well, that's how I do it. I use the entrainment in the background, in the background with spoken word. You are, it is. It cannot be I am, because I am
I don't believe it.
But I am isn't how you learn anyway. You never learn that way. You learn you are. Everybody learns you are, it is. They hear it on the news. They don't hear I am, poor, or I am war, or it's you are, it is.
Right.
It's always like it. That's how we learn. Once you hear it enough times, once you're exposed to these beliefs enough times,
repetition.
It becomes I am. No one ever has to practice I am rich, I am happy, I am healthy.
So it's the repetition of hearing the you
are
and it is.
That does it. And if you can get more of the you are and it is than the other garbage.
In the brainwave entrained state.
That's why, because you're not actually entrained so much as your brain is producing a theta state.
Okay.
Theta is where LTP gets produced. One of the reasons why kids tend to learn easier than adults. Because kids exist more in theta than they do in beta.
They do for
like
the
the
first
rest
7
of us
years
adults.
of their life, actually.
And they're getting a lot of LTP. The information goes in easier and it stays.
So I see what you're doing. You're getting the person's brain into a state of theta where these chemicals are being released, and then you're feeding the messages in where the LTP is making it stick.
Yes.
It's making it stick.
Yeah. And that's exactly how the brain works.
So did you do this for yourself? You did the Brain Wave Entrainment and then you recorded something like...
But I actually recorded because I also, as I'm teaching myself and learning about all these things, I'm learning that you actually have, you have many aspects to your brain, but physically you have a left and a right hemisphere.
Right.
There's a thing called the corpus callosum, which is a thin membrane that divides the two.
Right.
And literally, it's my belief that if you were to hold a brain in your hand, it would just flop open.
Yeah, unless it had that.
Because it's joined at the stem, but the corpus callosum is kind of like a sticky sheet that holds the two sides together.
Okay, so what did you do?
So what I did was I learned that with the hemispheres, different hemispheres have different traits, if you will. The right hemisphere tends to be more creative in nature, more abstract. The left hemisphere tends to be more factual, more number-oriented, that kind of thing. So I had statements, it is, you are, in the left ear, coming through the left ear, that was going to the right hemisphere. So these statements were more geared to a creative, inventive, dreamy kind of statement level, so as to be more readily accepted by the hemisphere. Statements in the right ear went to the left hemisphere, and they were more factual, more, as it is, this is how it is, kind of thing. And that's how perception works, actually. Information going in your left ear goes to the right hemisphere. Information in the right ear goes to the left hemisphere. And I also have another voice. So I have a voice here, a voice here. They're saying different things at different times. Another voice kind of floating in the middle of your head. And it can go both ways, but it also serves to mesh everything together. With the entrainment, the parts become, when they mesh together, become greater and greater and more powerful. So I'm using science and technology and simple...
What was the message like, or how was it coded, the message in the middle?
In the middle, they're coded for both.
Okay.
They can go either way.
Okay.
Personal preference can take it either way.
So it's a nice little mix of both, rational and creative.
That is correct, yes.
Interesting.
And then the hemispheres pick up what they want. Now, the nice thing about that is it turned out that it got by all my defenses.
Oh, so it went right into your unconscious.
And conscious at the same time.
Wow.
People are so quick to separate conscious and unconscious as if they're enemies. They act like enemies often. But that's because we treat them separately. It's like brothers or sisters. They get along sometimes, other times, And if you can teach the conscious and subconscious to get along and you teach them the same messages, the power is incredible. There's a lot of studies that say the subconscious mind is responsible for 90%, 80 to 90% of our actions and our beliefs and everything. What people don't understand, though, is that, and again, this is our perception. If you get 80% on an exam, that means you got 80% right, 20% wrong or incorrect. So people hear the unconscious is responsible for 80 or 90% of your actions and this and that and everything else. They think that the conscious mind is valued at, say, a fifth the value of the unconscious. But understand something, and again, when you look at it scientifically and you want to understand, it's not about that. It's more about understanding, okay, so the subconscious, let's accept that. Let's say the subconscious is responsible for 80, 90. Let's say it's responsible for 99%.
I think they mean it's unconscious programming.
But understand though, that it's people are hearing this.
Okay.
And then they feel helpless because I can't control my unconscious. I can't, so
no,
I feel
you can
helpless.
get it. You can work with it. Get it on board.
You're educated in this
I'm
way.
a hypnotherapist.
You're a hypnotherapist. So you understand these things.
Yeah.
I'm a brainwave entrainment engineer. I understand these things.
I get it.
But the average person feels helpless.
Yeah, I understand.
Because now they're going, I'm looking for something to help me.
It's out of my control. Yeah.
Now I have no control.
Right.
None at
it's out
all.
of my control.
But it's totally in your control. Because think about it. Where does the programming come from that the subconscious works on to make the 90% control? It comes from the conscious perception or sensations. You can control the sensations you get through your conscious mind. So you decide what you let in. I can consciously decide not to watch CSI, okay, which programs you to expect violence and hatred in the world. Okay, I can, I can choose not to read the newspapers. I can choose not to watch television news. I can choose what I'm going to expose myself to.
Exactly.
Okay. Once you make that choice, that 10% becomes just as powerful as the 90%.
Yeah, so you're saying we have conscious choice about what we want to feed our unconscious.
Yes.
And we want to feed it all good things. We want hopeful, nourishing, empowering things.
Exactly. And that's the thing. I felt disempowered. I felt disillusioned. I felt horrible. But through all these feelings of horrible came understanding. That I know, you know what? I have kind of like a kiddie saying that I use. I couldn't feel so happy if I didn't feel so crappy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because
you wouldn't know, you wouldn't recognize it.
That's right. I wouldn't have the gratitude associated with it, and I wouldn't understand things. It made me investigate. It made me understand. I'm not a scientist in the terms of a scientist like someone who works at Glaxo, or a pharmaceutical company, because I'm not trained. Traditionally trained as a scientist. That's right. I'm trained by life and experience. I had no choice. Right. Necessity is the mother of invention. Yeah. Well, I had necessity big time.
Okay, so when did you discover the power of the tri-liminals? Did you make yourself a recording?
Yes. I made different styles and different types. Okay. First I used, self-hypnosis recording that I would put in with my brainwave entrainment. And I made guided meditations as well. And I found those to be incredibly, I tried them with and without. And with the entrainment, it was incredibly powerful.
Yeah, because you're saying it goes right in.
That's right.
Right.
And it also distracts you. The distracts you a little bit from what's being said. So it kind of gets by a lot of defenses too. Right. But then I thought, this is helping me a lot. But, we discussed this also earlier. Never be happy, but always challenge yourself. Keep going. So I came up with the concept of, okay, well, I know the brain has preferences for different types of information. Sure. What if I gave the brain all these things all at once, but not in a way that would overwhelm it and make you agitated, in a way that would overwhelm, one of the things about brainwave entrainment that Mr. Seaver taught me was that with entrainment, your brain gets overwhelmed by the stimulation in a good way. Yeah. And it reorganizes itself to a higher level in order to deal with the stimulation.
Wow.
That is the understanding, right?
Yes.
And that's what I do with the entrainment and the tri-liminals, the three different.
Takes it to the next level, is what you're saying.
It makes your brain. It forces your brain to evolve. It forces your brain to create neural pathways to deal with the stimulation. There's a lot of people. They used to believe that the brain was static. So after a certain age, the cells you have are what you have. That's it, right? They die. And they die, you're down.
And they're gone.
That's right. Now they know that's not true. Neuroplasticity, all these things prove that the brain can change and mutate and do all kinds of wonderful things. Okay. So what we have now is we have people who have brain damage and they lose the ability to talk or they lose the ability to do certain motions. But then with the right training and with the right practice, they can talk again. That part of their brain is still damaged.
Well, they just retrained it.
What happened is, exactly, their brain has rerouted. It's come up with a way to evolve to a higher level so that it can now do things that it couldn't do before. This is what we are all about. Okay. And this is what all these understandings and all this experience taught me, that no matter how crappy I think life is, and that's just my interpretation, right? Right. Doesn't mean it's crappy. It means
back then it was your interpretation.
Yeah. But no matter how bad it is, no matter what struggles I have, no matter what this, what that I have, I can look at things in a different way. And when I look at them in a different way, I see that the initial way I was looking wasn't real. I was imagining it. I made it real in my mind, and that's what caused the panic. I can't tell you how many times now, through this understanding that I now have of myself, and I'm sure you notice this in your practice, you will talk to somebody, and I speak with people on the phone regularly from all over the world, and they are sad, or they're crying, or they're whatever. And then at the end of 20 minutes or a half an hour talking with them, and they're talking and I'm talking, I ask them, invariably, because you can hear in their voice that something's different now, right?
Yeah.
Compared to how you felt at the beginning of this call, how do you feel now? Oh, I feel a lot better. You know, or I even feel a little bit better. And then I ask them, so what does that tell you? And most of them don't understand.
You get them to acknowledge it.
Yeah, but
that
what
it's
they'll,
possible.
but you know what they'll do? They'll do the wrong thing. They'll say, you made me feel better.
Oh.
Right? That's what, if they say anything, they'll say, you made me feel better. Because what's different? I'm the thing that's different. So
You're
to
the
them,
stimulus.
I'm the difference maker. That's why they feel better.
Yeah.
And I ask them.
It puts it outside of them.
That's right. But then I say, actually, that's not true. What really happened, and this is through my own experience, and this is why I know this to be true. We spoke. I helped you to see things a little differently. You still have the money issues you had when you called me 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
You still have the emotional issues. You still have the physical issues. Nothing has changed in 20 minutes, and yet you feel better. What does that tell you? It tells you that 90% of what you feel is horrible in your life or bad in your life is all a perception.
It's your interpretation.
That's right. It's your interpretation. That is the most empowering knowledge in my mind.
Yeah,
to
question
realize,
the interpretation.
Yeah, to realize though, because you prove it to them. You're giving them the proof before you give them the concept. Because otherwise their belief systems might be so strong that it won't let them understand. That's right.
Yeah.
And that's how I learned. Because it happened to me, because I guess a part of me was teaching me this lesson without telling me why first. Because it knew if it told me why, I would never accept it, I wouldn't listen to it.
Right.
But now I'm saying, look, I've given you a measurable way of seeing you are feeling better now. But nothing has changed except how you look at the situation.
Perception.
Now you know that whatever your life is, you know, you could be dying of a disease. It's not what you think it is. You can always do something while you're here.